plans, what will Britain look like at the end of the next Parliament?
A thorough place. We have produced a manifesto which covers the broad policy areas in terms of the economy and the cost of living crisis that people are facing, in terms of education and employment opportunities. We've also produced a range of specific manifestos for particular groups like women, disabled people, LGBT, BME groups, and also on particular subject areas like education, for businesses, for example, and on health. So there is a range of manifestos that are out that people can read and consider in coming to a decision on how they will vote in this general election. But
the manifesto is a plan for a better politics, and I know that you mentioned getting rid of the House of Lords.
Yes.
Why do you think it is so necessary to get rid of the House of Lords?
Well, it's about replacing the House of Lords with something that is more modern and meaningful to people. And I believe in democratic engagement. I believe that accountability is important, and at the moment the House of Lords is basically appointed by the Prime Minister and through a nomination process which is quite challenging. And I think in this time when people have a lot of disaffection and there's been a break in trust in politics, I think we have a responsibility to find ways of the political system being increasingly accountable and relevant to people's lives. And I think
I've thumbed through the very thick manifesto. I didn't realise it would be so long, 156 pages or something of it. At its heart, I suppose.
Real programme for governance.
Well, yeah. Covers all bases, I suppose. At its heart is a vision for what Britain will look like in 2020. I was just wondering if you could sort of talk us through that, what Britain would look like at the end of the next Parliament if, you know, the Liberal Democrats were to be in power again.
Well, I mean, it does cover all bases, but actually what it tries to do is set out in some detail how we would actually go about implementing some of the changes we want to make. There are a number of key priorities for us. We have a commitment to balancing the books financially by 2018. We want to make sure that the deficit is cleared, because every day we continue to have a deficit, we're accumulating a debt that you and I, and also you, will be paying off for many years to come. So that's a key priority for us. A big thing for us in 2010 was lifting the tax threshold from £6,500 to £10,000. We've delivered that. The threshold is now £10,600, and by the end of the next Parliament we want it to be up to £12,500, because we think it's important that people on low and middle incomes keep more of their earnings. We want to make sure that we have a healthcare service that is fit for the 21st century, so we have a funding commitment to protect the NHS budget. But not just a funding commitment, also a very clear commitment to rebalancing the priorities in the NHS so that mental health gets its fair share of resources. There's been a long-running bias against mental health in our healthcare system. We're beginning to put that right. Education is a very high priority for us. We have commitment to secure funding for the next Parliament Cradle to College, and make sure that we fund both growth in pupil numbers and growth in terms of the cost of living. So those things are particular priorities. And the last one is actually one around the green agenda. We've set out some commitments to 5 new green laws, particularly around moving to a zero carbon economy over the next few years, making sure we continue to build on the work that we've been doing on sustainable energy, and commitments around the natural environment.
Okay, great. So before we move on to speak about specific aspects of the manifesto, I was just wondering if you had any. I mean, you've set out on the front page of it. I made my own, by the way, because I didn't want to pay the £7.50.
It's good value at £7.
Yeah, I suppose it's pretty thick, isn't it? But the front page is, I suppose, at the launch was set out as your key areas of priority. Now, Are any of those red lines? Are they red dotted lines? Are they are they flexible?
Well, I mean, the way that Nick Clegg put it at the manifesto launch was that they are the things that we will fight tooth and nail to get into any programme for government that we play a part in forming. The same was the case in 2010. We set out on the front page of our manifesto our 5 key priorities. All of those things, including 75% of all of our manifesto, found its way into the agreement that we have been implementing over the last 5 years. We will do the same this time. Those things will be key, but there will be other things in the manifesto we'll want to make sure are secured as well.
Sure. Under TUSC plans, in sort of very general terms, what will Britain look like at the end of the next Parliament?
If there was a TUSC government?
Yeah.
Well, we would have a £10 minimum wage, and that would be for all government employees. There won't be a statutory £10 minimum wage in place. We would have built over 1 million homes. Private accommodation would be, rented accommodation would be regulated, and there would be controls on the amount of it. There would be, the PFI contracts would have been scrapped, and so there would be hospital development. Hospitals would be developed. We would reopen the ambulance stations, the drop-in centres that have been closed. We would scrap benefits sanctions, so that people who are on benefits did not have that concern. In fact, actually, a mark of a civilised country is the benefits and the universal benefits. So, and we would certainly not attack universal benefits. There would be a tax on the wealthy. We would renationalise all the industries that have been the rail, the utilities, the energy will be renationalised, and we would be promoting membership of trade unions within those industries and other industries to secure proper rights. We'll scrap the 0 hours contracts. We would have like 3-month contracts, because that won't be a decision. Well, if you've got me for 3 months, it would be once you're employed, you're permanently employed. Probably missed a few things. We'll reopen everything that's been cut. It will be a radical programme of reversing the cuts and actually developing an education. We would make all schools public school, state schools. There'll be no private education. And we're coming on to education later on.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Yes, there'll be no private schools. No private schools. There'll be more. We'll be training teachers and doctors and nurses, and we'd be diverting and using people who are unemployed or in jobs that are not actually very useful into green jobs, what we call green jobs.
So, in one word, 2020 under TUSC, what would Britain look like?
A lot better for the millions. Better for the millions, maybe not the millionaires.
The manifesto, again, I printed it off. I've done this for everybody. I won't buy them, but I'll just print them off. And they are huge. They're very thick. I'm sure you've read it cover to cover. I certainly haven't. Just skimmed through it. But it kind of sells itself as a vision for a brighter and more secure future for Britain. And it's certainly got a sense of urgency about it. And whether that's entirely necessary, I don't know. But yeah, some of the language in it is quite dramatic, I would say. But putting that aside, what would you say, sort of, if the Conservatives get into government and get to do everything in here, what will Britain look like at the end of the next Parliament?
I think if we get to do that, we will have solidified the economic recovery. We are the fastest growing economy in the advanced developed world. We're creating more jobs than the rest of Europe put together. we can carry on that process, complete that process, make sure that we've got a country that's actually living within its means. So we're not spending more than we're taking in at the moment, which is totally unsustainable at the end of the day, because it actually means that the interest payments that we've been making are actually on are paying for other countries' universities, other countries' hospitals, and these sort of things. It means that we've got a strong economy, raising enough money to pay for fantastic public services. The reforms that we've put in the first term, we will continue to develop to make sure that decision making is made at its lowest point, closest to the patient, the pupil, the parent as possible. Making sure that young people get their life chances through a fantastic education. We've got 1 million more children being educated at the moment in good and outstanding schools. We need to make sure that that continues as well, to make that every child gets a fantastic start in life, and every person gets opportunity to work as well, and we always make sure that work pays. But of course, finally as well, it also means that we'll get a referendum on Europe by the end of 2017.